says, she's not a believer. And yet, when we got there, she wasn't there, and so we went ahead and prayed together, and then later she came home, and so out in the parking lot, she says, I probably missed the prayer, didn't I? I said, because she had expressed this desire, I said, yes, but we can pray. And we prayed together, and I held her hand and I think I had my arm around Nathan, I don't remember exactly. But as we prayed together, when we finished, and I released her hand, she started, and she bumped into her car, and she goes, that was powerful. God was doing something in her life. Is she all the way? Is she suddenly a believer? No. But God is speaking, and when he speaks to people, you can see reactions in their life that indicate that he's speaking. And when you notice that, you know that you're ripe to take the next step. And so that's what I was explaining to these 8th graders. Well, in the country among the Israelites, after they had been out of captivity, once they were in their own land, God chose a way that he was going to lead them. And he led them through Judges. And there's a whole book in the Old Testament. It's Joshua, Judges. That's right at the early time. And you see God letting them go on their own, but not really. He's standing there in the background all the time, nudging them in the right direction, providing for them the needs. And they get to these places where they are overcome and they have abandoned God, and God says, oh, come on back, I'm here. And he uses the things in their lives to say, hey, you need me. Pay attention. It's similar to what we read out of Isaiah 45 a couple weeks ago, where God says, I am the Lord. I am God. I want you to know me. And he says, I am the one that sends catastrophe for you, and I am the one who blesses you. Both of them are for my purpose of you knowing me. And he was doing that with Israel, and that period of time is known as a theocracy. Well, Israel could see themselves going, they had a good judge. His name was Samuel. And Samuel shepherded God's people well. But he didn't shepherd his own family well. All the other nations around, it was an inheritance issue of who was going to lead. And his sons were scoundrels. And Israel's going, oh no, here we go again. And they decided on their own that instead of a judge, instead of these two guys that had already proven that they were of poor character, they looked to the nations around and they saw some stability, and they said, Samuel, we want a king. Samuel understood what was going on, and in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 1, it says to us, when Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israel's leaders. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah, and they served at Beersheba, but his sons did not follow his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, you are old, and your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have. But when they said, give us a king to lead us, this displeased Samuel, so he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, listen to all the people, to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods, so they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly, and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. You know, kings have a way of claiming their rights, don't they? Actually, leaders do. Presidents do. Governors do. And it's amazing at all the corruption that we see happen in our own country, and all the misgivings, and all the rules that are made in ways that aren't really by the Constitution. I'm the king, I can... And you can finish that sentence however you want. But in this situation, God warned the people when they asked for a king what they would get. So they got a king. The king took charge. He could do whatever he wanted. And so one day, Samuel was supposed to come, and they were supposed to have a sacrifice together. And during that sacrifice, the people were waiting, but not waiting long enough. They weren't waiting patiently. And so the people said, well, he's not coming, I'm going. Everyone's still doing what's right in their own eyes. Have you ever done that? Have you ever done what's right in your own eyes? We do. Contrary to our wife's will, contrary sometimes to God's will, all different. Forget everyone else, I'm doing what I want to do. And so Saul, the king at that time, he was concerned about people that were leaving him. That was his primary concern, and so what he decided he was going to do was what Samuel was the only one authorized to do. And that was to make the sacrifice. He makes the sacrifice, and in 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 13, we're going to see what happens when Samuel walks up to Saul. He says, "You have done a foolish thing," Samuel said. "You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, you would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." Do you understand how important it is to keep the Lord's commands? To not pervert it, to not distort it, not to give yourself to the pleasant things, the things that you like, the things that you've always done, the things that God calls sin, we should call sin also. Because in doing so, God is still looking for men and women who are after the Lord's heart. Where's your heart? We have to examine ourselves, and I myself practice searching my heart on a daily basis, noting my reasons. You might look good to everyone around you, but God measures the heart. God wants to know what's in you, what drives you, and then he deals with you on those different levels. And there are times when I have preached messages and somebody says, "You hit me between the eyes," or you stepped on my toes, or you, whatever expression, or you stepped on my toes, or you, whatever expression, what they're talking about. That's God's about. That's God speaking to your heart, speaking to your heart. You questions about what's going on in your life, and you have to answer to Him. And I'm afraid what the church does, not our local church, but the church around the world, which includes us, the natural thing for the church to do is to say, I don't like that. And it's evident. It is outwardly evident. Because what used to happen is when God would speak to somebody's heart, everyone knew the place to deal with it. And it wasn't back in your own closet at your own home. It was in front of everyone, saying, God, I want rid of this thing because I want rid of this thing because I don't think I'm the only one that sees it. I want rid of this thing because it's sin against you, and I want your victory in my life. And people would come to the front pew and sit. People would come to the altar rail and kneel in prayer. An elder would come beside them and pray for them. But those things are a thing of the past. But the issue of God speaking to us is not a thing of the past. It's a thing of the present. And so as a thing of the present, we have to figure out, how are we going to deal with it? How are you as an individual going to deal with it? We encourage from time to time that when God speaks to you, that you speak to someone else who knows you, who you have a relationship with, who you know will not condemn you, because the church has been good at condemning people. And that's not what Jesus called us to. And so we struggle with what happens when I'm not a man after God's own heart. How do I deal with it? How do I become that man after God's own heart? Samuel said this to express that the kingdom was not going to be Saul's. It was not going to pass on to Saul's dependent. It could have happened, but he had refused to let it happen, not by his words, but by his actions. He lost the very thing that was precious to him because he was not a man that was going to walk after God. I know of families who have lost precious things because they weren't willing to walk after God's own heart. There have been regrets. There have been people who have come up to me and said, I wish I was still a part of your family. Your mom was so good. And they would tell different aspects of the reasons that they wished that these things had not transpired, and they knew the responsibility, their responsibility in the situation. And they were regretting what they had lost. And so King David was then anointed, and he became king, and he was a man after God's own heart. And because he was a man after God's own heart, God made him a promise. The promise was, there will not cease to be someone from your household that will be a ruler over the nation of Israel. From now on through eternity. This became blended with the promises that God had made of one that would come and and defeat Satan and win the battles for the people of Israel. He was known as the Messiah, and we sang about him this morning. And so David became the one that was obedient to God in everything. And you go, wait a minute, Bob. There are some things I remember that David did, like this taking of his neighbor's wife and then killing her husband. They weren't of God's own heart. Exactly. But God's heart is always a heart that when he speaks to you, that you are quick to repent. Saul had defended himself. It was your fault because you were late that I did this. He never once said, I was wrong. I should have never offered that sacrifice. I was the one that made the choice. He never took responsibility, and the responsibility is what we see in our own lives when we were baptized, that it is a pledge of a clear conscience toward God. So when God speaks to me, that I will obey him and not defend myself. And so one of the things that it's important to learn when we look at this issue of Jesus Christ being king, how do we see ourselves? Do we defend ourselves? Do we see ourselves as, it's okay, what I did was right, they were mean to me, it doesn't matter. You are God's representative in this world, and you are called to be like him. Yes, he will take you back. And he let Saul live for quite a while yet, and then he took him on the battlefield, not only him, but the descendant that should have taken his kingdom. But with David, it was different. David humbled himself. He acknowledged his sin. He repented when God spoke to him. Sometime God needed to speak to him through a prophet. And his response was immediate. He knew God, and he went to God, and he began fasting and asking for the life of this child in great remorse. That takes us forward to this story of Jesus as he comes into Jerusalem. Jesus knew why he was going to Jerusalem. He was going to Jerusalem to die. He knew that his time had now come. He was beyond all of the times when he says, no, don't tell anyone about me. He'd heal somebody and say, don't tell anyone because my time hasn't come. When he made the water into wine, don't tell anyone. I've done this. You're public. It's public. You can see it. Don't tell anyone, though. My time hasn't come yet. Now his time has come. And he knows it's come, and he begins preparing his people, his followers for this time. And he tells a parable. It's a parable of 10 minas. Minas are a type of money. And so he has 10 of them. The word says, well, we'll read it here in Luke 19, okay? We'll start at verse 11. At the beginning of the chapter, we see Jesus coming towards Jerusalem and going through Jericho. And this guy up in a tree named Zacchaeus, and he's a sinner, and he repents in an instant at a dinner in his house. After that, they're out walking again. It says while they were, or maybe they were still in the house, while they were listening to this,